Ever imagine yourself like in charge of getting all those fancy perfumes and cosmetics to people all over the world?
Mm-hmm.
That's what an import-export specialist does. And today, we're going to do a deep dive into how you can land that job.
It's a really cool job. You get to work with beauty products, but you're also dealing with like all the complicated stuff about international trade and shipping and all that.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. We're using these guides from RoleCatcher to help you prepare a career guide and an interview guide.
It's like having a coach who walks you through everything.
Totally.
One of the best things about RoleCatcher is their AI
Oh,
features.
yeah.
Imagine there's this tool that looks at the job description and then helps you write your resume and your CV to like perfectly match what they're looking for.
Whoa.
That's what RoleCatcher's AI does. So you're way more likely to get noticed.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
it's like a cheat code to get past those applicant tracking systems.
Yep. Exactly. And it's not just for the application. Like RoleCatcher's AI will give you feedback on your answers to application questions, and it will even help you practice for your interview.
Wow. So you can really put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk more about what this job actually is. Like, what are some of the main things an import-export specialist in this industry would do?
Think of them as the connection between when those beauty products are made and when they get to customers.
Right.
They have to deal with all these international trade rules, make sure things go through customs smoothly, and handle all the paperwork.
So it's not just about, like, knowing about perfume. It's about making sure it gets from one place to another across the world.
Exactly. And there's a lot of room to grow in this career. RoleCatcher's guide says you could start as an import-export coordinator. Then you might become an analyst, then a supervisor, and maybe even a manager leading a whole team.
That's really good to hear, especially because this industry is pretty competitive. The role catcher guide doesn't try to hide that. It says you have to work long hours, and there's a lot of pressure to meet sales goals.
Yeah, but it also says there's a huge demand for these specialists,
Right.
and you can make a really good living.
For sure.
Hmm.
It's a busy and demanding field.
Yeah.
But if you love a challenge, you're passionate about perfumes and cosmetics, it seems like it could be a super rewarding career.
Absolutely.
So let's get to the good stuff. Let's say you applied for the job and you got an interview. RoleCatcher's Guide lists some common interview questions, and we're going to break down each one and give you some tips on how to answer them.
Remember, these questions aren't just to see what you know. They also want to see how you think, how you solve problems, and
Yeah.
even what your personality is like.
Okay, first question. Can you tell us about your experience with customs regulations and documentation? Sounds pretty basic, but what are they really trying to figure out here?
They want to make sure you understand all the details of importing and exporting,
Hmm.
especially for perfumes and cosmetics. It's not just about knowing the rules, it's about showing how you've actually used that knowledge in real life.
So instead of just listing a bunch of regulations, you should talk about specific documents you've worked with, like commercial invoices, packing lists, and certificates of origin.
Yes, exactly. And to be even more specific, for cosmetics, you'll need to know about material safety data sheets.
What are those?
They tell you all the ingredients in a product and any dangers they might have. It makes sure that the products meet safety standards in different countries.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of detail they're looking for. Would it be good to talk about a time you had a problem with customs and how you fixed it?
Definitely. It shows that you can solve problems and that you take initiative. You could talk about a time when a shipment got held up because a document was missing, and then you had to quickly find the paperwork and get it released.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. How do you keep track of inventory levels and ensure timely delivery of goods? This one seems like it's all about being organized and understanding logistics.
It is. But they're also looking for more than that. They want to see if you can predict how much of something people will want, if you can work well with suppliers and shipping companies, and if you have ways to avoid problems with deliveries.
So don't just say, I'm organized. Talk about the specific inventory systems you've used, how you predict demand, and maybe even a time you had to fix a late delivery.
Exactly. You want to show them that you're proactive, you think ahead, and you can keep those perfumes and cosmetics moving smoothly from the factory to the customer.
That's a good point. Okay, now for a question that tests your knowledge of global trade, do you have experience with international trade agreements and tariffs?
This is where you get to show that you understand the big picture. The interviewer wants to see if you know how trade agreements and tariffs can affect prices, sourcing decisions, and importing and exporting in general.
So it'd be smart to mention specific trade agreements that are important for the perfume and cosmetics industry.
Absolutely. For example, if you're working with cosmetics from Southeast Asia, you could talk about the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. That agreement gets rid of tariffs between certain countries, so
Yeah.
it makes trading easier and cheaper.
I see.
Yeah. Or you could talk about how changes in EU tariffs on organic ingredients affected your company's decision on where to get ingredients for a new line of natural perfumes.
That's a good example.
Right.
Shows that you understand how those things work in real life and that you can think critically. That will definitely impress the interviewer.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's move on to a question about suppliers.
Mm.
Can you walk us through your process for selecting suppliers and evaluating their performance?
This one is all about showing that you can manage those really important relationships with suppliers. You want to talk about how you carefully choose suppliers, what criteria you use to make sure they're reliable and provide good quality products, and how you negotiate contracts and track their performance.
So it's not just about finding the cheapest supplier. It's about finding the right partner who can consistently deliver high-quality products and meet your company's standards for ethics and sustainability.
Exactly. The perfume and cosmetics industry is especially careful about things like ethical sourcing and sustainability. Be ready to talk about how you make sure your suppliers are doing things the right way.
I bet it would be really effective to tell a story about a time you had to deal with a problem with a supplier. For example, what if a supplier was using packaging that didn't meet your company's environmental standards? How would you handle that?
That's a great example. It would show that you really care about those values and that you can work with suppliers to find solutions.
Okay, we've covered a lot today. We've talked about what an import-export specialist does, explored the career path, and started digging into those important interview questions.
But remember, this is just the beginning. The world of perfumes and cosmetics is huge, and it's always changing.
That's true. Continuous learning is really important in this field.
And that's where resources like RoleCatcher can be so helpful. Their platform gives you insights into careers, skills development, and even connects you with potential employers. It's all about giving you the power to take control of your career.
I like that. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, we'll leave you with one final thought to think about. Welcome back. We're still talking about those tricky interview questions you might get for that import-export specialist job.
Right. You've got the background, but now we need to practice the answers.
Okay, so here's a question that really tests your problem-solving skills. Can you describe a time when you had to manage a complex supply chain or logistics operation? What kind of stories should someone be ready to tell for this one?
This is where you want to show that you can handle those unexpected problems that always seem to come up in international trade. Think about a time when things didn't go as planned.
So they don't just want to hear about the situation. They want to know what you did to fix it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did a volcano erupt and mess up your air freight route for those fancy French perfumes? Did a regulation suddenly change at a big market and almost stop your whole shipment of organic cosmetics?
It sounds like they want someone who can stay calm when things go wrong, think quickly, and come up with creative solutions to keep those products moving.
You got it. Talk about how complicated the situation was, the strategies you used, and the steps you took to minimize problems and get things back on track.
And don't forget to mention what you learned from that experience.
Right.
It shows that you're always trying to improve, which is super important in this field. That's always changing. Now for a question that shows how committed you are to staying up to date. How do you stay up to date on market trends and changes in regulations that could impact import-export operations?
This is where you show that you're proactive, not reactive. The world of perfumes and cosmetics is always changing with new trends, regulations, and technologies.
So how can you show that you're on top of things?
Talk about what you use to stay informed. Do you read trade publications like Global Cosmetics Industry or Happy? Do you go to international trade shows like Cosmoprof or Beauty World Middle East?
And being part of professional networks both online and offline seems important too.
Definitely. And don't just list things, show that you're actually using them.
Did you read something in beauty packaging that gave you an idea for more sustainable packaging? Did you hear a speaker at a supply chain conference say something that you now use in your work?
Those are really good examples. It shows that you're not just passively reading stuff, but you're really thinking about how it applies to your job and the industry.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something that's becoming more and more important for customers and companies. How do you ensure compliance with environmental and ethical standards in your import-export operations?
This is where you show your values and how committed you are to doing business the right way. The interviewer wants to know that you're not just focused on getting the job done, but on doing it ethically.
So it's about going further than just following the rules. It's about showing that you really understand the ethical side of global trade.
Exactly. The perfume and cosmetics industry has been criticized for things like animal testing, sustainability, and fair labor practices. So if you're interviewing for this job, You need to be ready to talk about these issues and show how you've personally made sure things were ethical and environmentally friendly in your previous work.
Right. For example, you could talk about how you worked with suppliers to use cruelty-free testing methods, or how you switched to using packaging made from recycled materials.
Those are great examples. It shows that you're not just aware of the problems, but you're actively trying to find solutions. Okay, the last question from RoleCatcher's guide that we'll talk about today is, how do you approach negotiating pricing and contracts with suppliers and logistics providers? It seems like this one needs a mix of business smarts and people skills.
It does. Negotiating good contracts is super important for an import-export specialist. You have to get the best deals for your company while also keeping those important relationships with suppliers and logistics providers.
So how can you show off your negotiation skills in an interview?
Focus on how you build relationships. Find leverage and create situations where everyone wins. Do you prioritize long-term partnerships over short-term gains? Do you research what the other side wants and needs before you start negotiating?
I bet telling a story about a tough negotiation that you won would really impress the interviewer.
Absolutely. It lets you bring those negotiation ideas to life. Talk about the challenges you faced, the strategies you used, and how you got a good result in the end.
Like maybe you were negotiating a contract with a supplier for a rare essential oil used in a high-end perfume. The supplier wanted to raise the price a lot because of a bad harvest. How would you handle that? Would you find a compromise without sacrificing quality or hurting your company's profits?
Perfect example. It shows that you can think strategically, find creative solutions, and keep those important supplier relationships even when things are tough.
So imagine this. You aced the interview. You got the job as an import-export specialist for a luxury perfume brand. And you're like, yeah, I'm killing it.
Feeling great.
But then you get a call.
And they tell you that a huge shipment of your brand's new perfume, the one everyone's been waiting for, is stuck in customs.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there are some unexpected issues.
That's a nightmare. This is where all those schools we've been talking about come in. You know, knowing the rules, being able to solve problems, and all those negotiation tactics.
For sure. It's a real test to see if you can stay calm, think clearly, and make decisions under pressure. So let's talk about what you would do in this situation.
Okay. What's the first thing you should do?
You got to figure out why the shipment is delayed. Is it a missing document? A problem with the labels? A new regulation? You can't make a plan until you know what you're dealing with.
Right. So you need to investigate. I bet it would be smart to talk to your contacts at customs and your logistics providers and suppliers.
Absolutely. Those relationships are super important in these situations. A quick phone call might tell you it's just a small mistake. Or it could be something more complicated that you need to understand the regulations better to solve.
And while you're trying to fix the problem, it's important to keep everyone updated right. Like your boss and the marketing team who probably have a whole launch planned for this new perfume.
Exactly. You have to manage expectations, give regular updates, and make sure everyone knows you're doing everything you can to get that perfume on the shelves.
So let's say you figured out what the problem is. What are some ways to actually get that shipment moving again?
This is where you need to use your knowledge of customs regulations and think outside the box. Could you speed things up by giving them more documents, or by working with customs to find a way around the problem?
Or maybe if you're really short on time, you could look at other shipping options, even if it costs more.
Exactly. Sometimes you have to decide if it's worth spending more money to protect your brand's reputation and keep your customers happy.
Right, because a delayed launch could hurt you more in the long run.
Definitely.
This whole situation really shows how much this job changes all the time. You have to be flexible, resourceful, and able to make tough choices when things get stressful.
And that's what makes it so cool. No 2 days are the same, and you're always learning new things.
So if you're someone who loves perfumes and cosmetics and enjoys a challenge, this could be the perfect career for you.
Don't forget, the skills and knowledge you get aren't just about getting a job. They're about succeeding in a really interesting and global industry.
And remember, tools like RoleCatcher can give you a big advantage. They give you the information and practice you need to do great in your interview and in your career.
So go for it. Be ready to think on your feet and dive into the world of import-export. Who knows, maybe you'll be the one making sure those amazing beauty products get to people all over the world.
That's all for our deep dive into the world of the import-export specialist. We hope you learned something new and feel ready to take the next step in your career.
Good luck with your interview.